Hello and welcome to another edition of the Wiseguy Show. I'm not a wise guy, but for all intents and purposes, I pretend to be one on YouTube. I, of course, am your host, Albert Lanier. You can catch me on The Writer Report, which can be found at mixlr.com. That's mixlr.com. I do the NFL Hot Topics segment every Monday. And so check out my past segments by going and checking out The Writer Report. That is RYDER report, the writer report on mixlr.com. That's mixlr.com. Of course, I'm here with another episode of the Wiseguy Show, and we're here to deal with week 2. This, of course, is your short form sports show that deals primarily with the NFL. In fact, exclusively with the NFL. Week 2 of the NFL, another good week for me. Won't tell you how well I did. You can hear those guys at the Pick Six shows, and they can inform you about that. But again, one of the things that I said this on the Writer Report, and I'll say it here. Every week thus far, in the NFL, there has been at least one good game. Well, one great game every week. So far, it's been a good season, at least in terms of games, because there's been a great game at least every week. That's not always the case. There are seasons that have passed by where you get middling games, you get a lot of crap games, you get a lot of terrible games, in fact. Sometimes you get close ones, sometimes you get a lot of close ones, but not really great games. But there's been at least one great game. In week 2, that great game was the Cowboys-Giants game, went to overtime at AT&T Stadium, and the Cowboys managed to get their first win of the season over the now pathetic Giants. This was when Russell Wilson was still a quarterback with the New York Football Giants, and the reality was Wilson was great in this game. He heaved some bombs down the field and got some touchdowns with Malik Neighbors, who of course is now out. But the thing about that, of course, Dallas's defense is what I call the vacant lot defense, because there's nobody around in the backfield. But the Cowboys managed to keep up with the Giants, and they forced into overtime, and they won off the feet of their outstanding kicker. And that was a fantastic game, a great game. I don't think it was that much of a surprise, considering Dallas had played very well the first week. Now, an interesting game was the Steelers-Seahawks game. Seahawks are turning into a fine team this year. The Steelers lost that game. Basically, I would say largely, it was competitive for a while, but they lost it because of the mistake of a rookie who had touched the ball on a kickoff, and it was, of course, live. So that meant that the Seahawks could go after the ball, and they scored on that ball, and that eventually turned the tide in favor of Seattle in that game. But this is what I will say about the Steelers. A lot of people have been putting down the Steelers and saying how terrible their defense is and how lethargic they are. Here's what I will say, and I'm a fan of 3 teams, including, of course, the Raiders. I'll make no bones about that. One of those teams is the Steelers as well. And the thing about the Steelers is the Steelers know what they're doing. They brought in Aaron Rodgers because they know he can win games from behind. He can win close games. And that's what the Steelers have done. They weren't able to win this game against the Seahawks. But the first game when they played New York Jets was a really close contest, and they were able to eke that one out, and they were able to win. Aaron Rodgers in the first game had thrown for 4 touchdowns. So you could tell that the Steelers, they have something there with Aaron Rodgers. He's playing fairly well. He's certainly getting touchdowns in every game that he's played thus far. And I think that the Steelers are, I know they're better than what people have said. I think the cynics are trying to have their day, and I'm cynical too, but I'm also pragmatic. So you had that great Cowboys-Giants game. You had a pretty good Steelers-Seahawks game. And the Packers beat the Commanders. They had beaten the Lions in week 1. Their defense looked scary. This was a scary looking defense from the Green Bay Packers. It was quite impressive what they were able to do, and this is a point that I've made elsewhere, is the Packers were able to slow down the offense of Washington. They were able to do that with the Lions too. Remember what they did in week 2, however, the Lions played the Bears and thoroughly destroyed them. They scored over 50 points. You look at the Lions Bears, which is in week 2, they scored over 50 points. And the Lions demonstrated they were back in form. They had the brief blip in week 1 against the Packers. Their offense was slowed down. They weren't able to make a lot of big plays. They weren't really able to move down the field as effectively. But they were able to get things done in this game against the Bears. Well, they demonstrated that their offense can easily score points. And their offense is still not only really good, but also very potent. So that was an important victory for the Lions. They beat the Bears by over 50 points. But getting back to what I was saying about the Packers and the Commanders, the Packers also won. Their defense primarily slowed down not only the Commanders in week 2, which has a good offense, but also the Lions, which have a first-rate offense. We'll talk about the Packers later and how that defense is done. But for now, for the first 2 games, the Packers defense was really good. Really, really good. Also, some other interesting games. The Eagles beat the Chiefs. And the Atlanta Falcons beat the Vikings handily. Now, the Vikings had an impressive victory over Chicago in the first week when J.J. McCarthy was in. And then they turn around and they get stomped on by the Atlanta Falcons, who are not a great team. In fact, they blew a game in week 1. So an interesting week 2. This, of course, is an intriguing one. Like I said, there's a great game every week. A great game every week in the NFL. That's the interesting thing about the NFL this year. There's at least one great game, and it was the Dallas Giants game. And absolutely terrific game. Absolutely wonderful game. Just like in week 1, it was the Bills-Ravens game. That was a first-rate game. So, so far, so good with the NFL in terms of some of the quality of its games. Really good. That, of course, has been another edition of the Wiseguy Show. I, of course, am Albert Lanier. You can catch me on the Writer Report. That's the RYDER Report on mixlr.com. You can find it on mixlr.com. I do the NFL Hot Topic segment there on the Writer Report. So you can find me there on Mondays and check out my other segments. I've done at least a couple segments thus far. You can check those out. Until next time, this is the Wiseguy Show, and this is the show that lets you know how to be wise to the NFL on YouTube, or to get wise to the NFL on YouTube. Bye for now.